Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the, I was going to say, wherever we are, the Howland Cultural Center. I'm so confused. I'm Diane Lapis, president of the Beacon Historical Society, and I welcome you to our final meeting of the year. I'll introduce Rob Doyle in a minute. I just want to make a few announcements. December 10th, we have our members' holiday party. Please join us at the headquarters at 61 Leonard Street for our party from 3 to 5 p.m. We will be serving light refreshments, so we hope you join us. We have an incredible exhibition at the moment featuring Shirley Botsford, one of our local artists, and her home on High Street, where she was inspired by the architectural elements. So you should come see the exhibit. That will be open through February. And we have our gift shop open at the headquarters as well as on our website. So please consider buying some history-related books, including Bob's Memory Keeper book. And we have mugs, T-shirts, and all sorts of wonderful things for yourself, friends, and family. What else did we want to add about this? Any other comments? Oh, yes. We had an amazing acquisition today, thanks to the Locust Grove Estates. Locust Grove, is that the correct title? Historic Site, which was a donation of a sleigh that was originally owned by Dr. Slocum from the Craig House. And we think it's about 1840, 1850. It's in incredible condition. And we have it on our porch, so we're going to decorate it for the holidays, and we hope you come see it. It's an amazing piece of history. So, okay, so with that, I'd like to introduce Rob Doyle. He's the president of the president of the Dutchess County Historical Society. I'd also like to recognize Bill Jeffway, who's here, who's the director. Bill, if you can wave. Thank you for coming. Rob is, his passion has always been the Hudson River, especially the Hudson River painters. So you'll see that reflected in the work that he does with his history stories. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for coming out tonight. So I look forward to sharing some things with you. I've got quite a bit of material, but I'm going to roll through the slides pretty quick. So thank you again. Tonight we're going to take a quick look here at the location and relationship of New Hamburg to other areas, as well as follow a rough timeline of historical development, touch on key people, industries, structures, disasters, and compare images to then and now in the hamlet. And I'll entertain questions of general interest at the end. So, I got to make sure I'm using this right. Here we go. New Hamburg is a Hudson Riverfront community located at the southern area in the town of Poughkeepsie. A lot of people think it's Wappinger, but it's actually town of Poughkeepsie in Dutchess County. This hamlet has been known as Hood Landing, High Point, and Wappinger Landing. Approximately 65 miles north of New York City and 78 miles south of Albany. And south of New Hamburg is Chelsea, and which is also known as the Lower Point and Carthage Landing. And then below that is where we are now in Beacon, which was, of course, Fishkill Landing before it merged with Matawan and became Beacon. So right across the river from New Hamburg is Marlborough, and north is Poughkeepsie, of course, and then all the way, the landings all the way up to Poughkeepsie, and inland, which made that landing in New Hamburg really good, was Wappinger and all the industry and the communities and the big estates that were there in Wappinger. When we talk about the pre-European discovery, early in the 17th century, the Wappinger lived along the east bank of the Hudson River from Manhattan Island to what is now Poughkeepsie and eastward to the lower Connecticut River Valley. The Wappinger Confederacy of Algonquin-speaking Indians had a strong presence along the lands and at the mouth of the Wappingers Creek. Their totem was an emblem, and I'll share that with you here. Their totem is an emblem of the wolf. And they held their major tribal ceremonies on the large flat rock, a peninsula right across the Hudson River and a little bit south of New Hamburg. When Henry Hudson and his crew sailed up the Hudson River in 1609. They anchored just south of the mouth of the Wappingers Creek and witnessed, according to the log of the Half Moon, a large gathering of natives, their bodies painted, singing and chanting, while dancing feverishly around a circle of fires. The location of that flat rock was named Danskamer, a Dutch word meaning the Devil's Dance Chamber. Today it is still known as Danskamer Point. Perhaps the reason that the land surrounding the creek was the capital of their confederacy was because of the spiritual significance in their culture of the apparent alignment between these landscape features and the events on the horizon of the longest and shortest days of the year, the winter and summer solstice. So basically, we don't know exactly what they were doing on Danskamer, but there's a good chance that it wasn't devil worshiping, but rather the Native American spirituality and astrological ceremonial practices were actually happening there. You see this stone on the, I guess as you look at it, would be on your left. The Poughkeepsie Standing Stone on the corner of Oakwood and Delaverne in Wappingers also aligns with the mouth of the creek and Danskamer. An engineer estimates for this ancient stone to be standing in this position, there is at least 17 more feet below the surface. The key to development in New Hamburg was the fact that all the European settlements along the Hudson River began at the waterfront and moved inland following existing waterways. Dutchess became a county in 1683 by an act of the New York State Legislature, making it one of 12 counties statewide. The Rondout Patent, which we're looking at here, of 1689, granted Francis Rombout and Julian Verplanck all the riverfront land from the mouth of the Fishkill Creek, which is here on the other side of Dennings Point in Beacon, to the Wappingers Creek, and inland following both creeks to the Beekman Patent in Dutchess County. The Rombout Patent includes lands known today as New Hamburg. And you can see where the creek is there, and this is part of the map showing all the little trees and so forth. So that's the Wappingers Creek up there at the top part. Farmer's Landing was built in approximately 1750. The Dutch-style stone house was the Verplancks' station agent. This was part of the wharf complex of Hudson River waterfront structures, including Lent and Waldron's store. Built while New York was still a colony, it was fired upon by cannons from the British ships that breached the chain at West Point on their way up the Hudson River to burn the then capital of New York, Kingston. Note, 2 cannonballs have been found on this property and donated to a museum. The 3-foot-thick stone walls were untouched by the cannon fire. In 1798, Nicholas Kruger purchased the stone house and store and assumed oversight of the wharf. This map here is in 1798. On Benjamin Eli's map of 1797, illustrates the dance chamber. You can see it on the map there. On the west shore of the Hudson on the lower left, Jews Creek on the upper west shore, and on the east side of the Hudson is the mouth of the Wappinger Creek and Waldron's Landing, where the 1750s Farmer's Landing, this home still exists today. There are lime kilns on both sides of the Hudson. Here are examples of the lime kilns and how they operated. Liming, or lime burning, was a big industry along the Hudson. The finished product was used as construction mortar and for adding nutrients to the soil as far away as New Jersey at the time. Gomez Mill at his homestead on Jews Creek. In 1716, Louis Moses Gomez, a Jewish immigrant from Europe in New York City, purchased 1,200 acres with river access in what is now Marlboro, New York, near the current border with Newburgh. The Gomez family amassed 3,000 acres by 1723. They built a field house, a blockhouse on what was known as Jews Creek to conduct trade and maintain provisions as an extension of their successful enterprise in colonial New York. Gomez launched one of the Mid-Hudson Valley's earliest commercial ventures, operating mills and lime kilns on the property, then shipping the materials to New York City markets. Today, the Gomez homestead with a mill is the oldest Jewish historic site in America, and it's open to the public. In 1737, Dutchess County was divided into 7 precincts. Poughkeepsie became a precinct including New Hamburg. The bottom precinct marked south became Putnam County. Yes, Putnam County was part of Dutchess County at one time. This image is the survey for underwater rights granted to John Drake Jr. on September 21st, 1804, as part of his 30-acre deed. The early grant of underwater rights made it possible for the future development of White's Hudson River Marina in New Hamburg. This 1820 survey map of Drake and Bogardus lots, yeah, that's the one, is in the Drake family. As you take a look at this, let me just share with you a little bit about the Drake family and the Bogardus family. John Drake Jr. was born in 1766 and died in 1837. He was of English descent. John Drake's father, Peter Drake, was a loyalist, remaining loyal to the king during the American Revolution. Being on the wrong side of the Revolution, Peter had his lands in Westchester confiscated, took his family, and fled to New Brunswick, Canada in 1783. Young John was 17 at the time. He remained in the New York colony as a patriot. John Drake married Cornelia Bogardus. Cornelia was born in Hopewell in the same year as John. She died in 1830. John and Cornelia married in 1789. They were both 19 years of age. Together they had 12 children, of which 7 predeceased their parents. In 1808, John Drake Jr. built a wooden drawbridge across the Wappingers Creek on the road to Fishkill. Samuel Bogardus was born in Hopewell in 1770. He was the younger brother of Cornelia by 4 years. He married Anna Ackerman. They had 7 children. John Drake and Samuel Bogardus partnered on land acquisitions and business ventures. A union of an English family with a Dutch family provided the primary developmental start to New Hamburg. In 1809, John Drake gave 1 acre of land to the trustees of the Presbyterian Church of the Wappinger Creek. Note the Presbyterian Church is indicated at the top of the mountain in the 1820 map. The view from the top, looking south to the mouth of the Wappinger Creek with the railroad bridge crossing the mouth, Danskammer Point is across the river with Chelsea protruding on the east shore down the river and having the Hudson Highlands in the far background. This photo was taken from Franny Reese Bench as part of the Greenway Trail up on the hill there down near New Hamburg. I discovered this beautiful little headstone in the cemetery and took a photo of it and added it to the web page listing for Libby, who passed away at 6 days old. While the cemetery records are extensive, very few have images of the headstones to complement the listing, so I added that one in for her. In 1824, Charles Millard, who owned a lumber business based in Ulster County, moved to the landing and opened a lumber yard at the end of Point Street. Since most of the lumber of the log shipments were made by water, Millard's son, Walter, branched out into shipbuilding and also freighting. John Drake was instrumental in building the road from Houstonville to Hopewell to open up a commerce route to bring customers into his business operations in New Hamburg. New Hamburg became a port community on the river, with ships landing and loading and unloading all nearby Point Street and then taken inland to Poughkeepsie, Wappingers, and beyond. Being the first quarter of the 19th century, in the beginning of that time, New Hamburg Landing eclipsed the wharf complex of Nicholas Kruger's Landing. Kruger's Landing business continued to decline as New Hamburg developed into a busy port. In this 1833 auction broadside is primarily for the sale of Samuel Bogardus building lots with additions. Handwritten and signed agreements are attached with 3 wax seals. One transaction example includes, and I'll quote, "I have this day above bought lot number 2, a corner lot of Division and Water Street, as struck for $17 on the above terms, signed Francis Drake." However, another example includes the auction sale of the 2 bellows and 2 anvils for $40. What this illustrates is that land was still very cheap and plentiful, while finished manufactured goods remained expensive. So you have a building lot, $17, and these bellows and anvils for $40. Just amazing. In 1837, Ephraim Dubois sold his property on Water Street, including the lime quarry and kiln, to Adolphus Abram Brower from Ulster County. In 1845, Brower tore down the Dubois house and built his own home on the same site. And of course, this house is there now with the historic sign that goes along with it. The old lime dock was approximately where the New Hamburg Yacht Club is currently situated. Number 1 Water Street was originally the 1840 residence of Adolph Brower, with a view overlooking the New Hamburg Yacht Club. The yacht club actually started as an ice boat racing club in 1869. It is a beautifully functioning membership-based motor boat yacht club today. In 1869, the name was the New Hamburg Ice Yacht Club. The dues at the time were $3 for active members, those that owned yachts, and $2 for non-active members, those who did not. It was said to be the pioneer ice yacht club in the area. Summer boating wasn't included in its activities until many years later. The ice boats could sail faster than the trains. It was primarily a wealthy man's sport that took place along the Hudson at all the landings. Today it's considered the 6th oldest yacht club in the United States. In 1848, the New York Central Railroad developed along the east shore of the Hudson River, connecting New Hamburg with New York City and stops in between. Commercial development began to reshape the hamlet. A train station was built at the railroad crossing of Main Street, which no longer exists. The railroad brought new growth and development while cutting off many water outlets along the route, vital to the fishing and boating interest. For a time, while the over 800-foot tunnel was being built through New Hamburg's hillside, the hamlet became a busy bottleneck. A railroad tunnel was completed in 1851, but for the 2 years of construction, a boat from the east side of the Wappingers Creek in the area of Farmers Landing would meet the northbound train at the dock to pick up northbound passengers to ferry them around to a waiting train just north of the unfinished tunnel. Therefore, 2 trains were needed at New Hamburg to complete service to Poughkeepsie for 2 years. In the 1850s, the commercial development and center of the hamlet transitioned from Point Street to Main Street as a result of the railroad's impact from increased traffic flow of people and freight by rail. This 1820 map shows Point Street, where most of the business was conducted before the installation of the rail lines. The docks constantly bustled with the movement of people, livestock, produce, and dry goods. The lime kilns and quarries were located at Water Street and had their own docks. A panoramic view here showing the point where Millard had his lumber business on Point Street. Across the way is Cedar Cliffs. Note the steeple. I don't know if you can see it or not. There's in the picture. Note the steeple on the First Presbyterian Church had been moved down from the mountain onto the lot that once belonged to John Drake. Also note there are no structures across the river anymore in the photo. A close-up view of the Cedar Cliffs community, also once known as Hampton. Today it is an abandoned quarry. I have hiked all through that area following the creek up to Gomez's Mill historic property. The steamboat, Mary Powell, the Queen of the Hudson, from 1862 to 1917, stopped at New Hamburg twice a day, going north in the morning and heading south later in the day. It was built in 1861 at Allison's Shipyard, Jersey City, New Jersey, for a reported $80,000. When not in service, it docked along Rondout Creek in the village of Rondout, later to become part of the city of Kingston. The Powell was the most luxurious and fastest vessel on the Hudson River for 55 years, making daily trips to and from Manhattan for a modest fee. White's Hudson River Marina two-story brick office building was the same building used by the lumber yard that occupied the Point property before the White's family started in business in 1959. Another former commercial building, once the site of the New Hamburg Hotel, is located across from White's Marina. Note the inlaid brick arch in the stone front. Once a grocery store, now this brick two-story building is a residence on the corner of Point Street and River. This circa 1870 brick double house built by William Shea is located at number 18 Point Street. Botini Fuel Distribution Center has been operating in New Hamburg since 1959. The home, number 2, on the corner of Point Street and Main, used to be a park in the hamlet, as you can see where it has the flagpole there. Built in the 1930s, this brick firehouse now serves as a residence. However, the all-volunteer, fully equipped New Hamburg Fire District Engine Company No. 1 is headquartered nearby on Channingsville Road in Wappinger Falls. The home next to the firehouse was a Sears and Roebuck kit home. It was a kit home that arrived by freight train in 1928 to be assembled on a foundation in the current location. It appears that the home may have been the Argyle model, which according to the advertising is already cut and fitted for just $2,349. St. Nicholas Church on the Hudson was formerly the Zion Memorial Chapel. The church was built in 1902. It has regular Sunday services. The stained glass windows were made by David Maitland Armstrong, who grew up on his family homestead on Danskammer. He was a gifted artist, and Armstrong painted landscapes and was a student of Louis Comfort Tiffany, where he learned to make stained glass windows. The home that David Maitland Armstrong grew up in on Danskammer Point, when the home was dismantled, the large columns were donated to Storm King Art Center and are on view there now. One of 3 original churches in New Hamburg, this circa 1850 once Methodist church serves as a single-family residence today. It still has its original bell dated 1889 in the tower. Before looking at some of Main Street, let's witness the 1867 map, which shows the railroad tracks and tunnel and the development that had progressed. Note the island, which would be down in the lower left corner there. Note the island in the Hudson is now owned by Drake in this map. An earlier map had it named as Oakley Island. Today it is known as Rabbit Island, and it has a beautiful home on it. The Presbyterian church that was up on the hill with the cemetery is now in the hamlet on a former Drake property. I do not know for sure the exact date that it moved down. There are references of it as being built in 1845. Most likely, 1845 would have been the date it was moved down to its current location, as it was shown on the top of the hill in the 1820 map. Further, moving it down before the railroad tracks were installed in 1848 would make sense. During the 1860s, the population of New Hamburg was approximately 330 people. Okay. Something moved on me, sorry. On the corner of Point Street is number 4, Main Street, which was built by William Shea around 1865. Shea's ornate brick warehouse was originally for the distribution of cloth scraps from the Wappinger Mills to supply manufacturers of paper. The brick warehouse building no longer stands on the property. A view looking north on Point Street at the intersection of Main Street, the 2 wooden framed homes on either side of the intersection are number 3 Main on the left and number 5 Main on the right. And of course, they do exist today. Here are 2 historic 19th century Main Street homes. On the left is number 13 Main, known as the Conklin Bishop House, built about 1850. On the right is number 9 Main, the John Lawson House, dating about 1844. 10 Main Street, this wooden frame structure was built around 1870 and known as the Myers General Store. Number 12 Main Street, this wood frame building was built around 1870 also and served as the post office at the time. Like many of the period properties in New Hamburg, this one's being renovated, and I do look forward to seeing what it's going to look like when they're done. By the way, the post office for New Hamburg now is up in Hewsonville. And we're taking a look at number 15 Main Street. In 1867, it's a converted carriage house became the Central Hotel. The main floor was a tavern with rooms above for guests. It advertised, and I quote, "Meals at all hours, oysters in every style, board by the day or week, boats to let for reef fishing." Reef fishing is still popular today, and it refers to Diamond Reef, not far from the New Hamburg shoreline. It has also been called Lime Dock Reef. At low tide, it can be a challenge for large vessels that venture outside the marked channel, as we shall witness in a few minutes. The First Presbyterian Church was moved from the top of the hill, as I mentioned, where the original 18th and 19th century cemetery still is, and down into the hamlet. I understand that the church went into private ownership in the 1930s. Today, it's a 5-family residence. A comparison on Main Street, looking west. Note the Presbyterian Church steeple in the postcard image. The contemporary image witnesses the pedestrian tunnel leading train passengers under the tracks to board the southbound train from the platform on the other side of the tracks. Here are images showing the Eagle Hotel building on the east side of the tracks on Main Street, and a contemporary image of what it looks like now. It's a multifamily home. This beautiful single-family residence once housed the Millard family, who were the owners of the lumber yard where White's Marine is on Lower Point Street. This large home was built about 1870. At one time, there were multiple tracks in New Hamburg with side rails to handle the tremendous amount of commercial freight that came in and out, primarily from the large factories in the town of Wappinger and the commercial enterprises of the village of Wappingers Falls. Sloops and schooners sailed the 14 reaches of the Hudson River from New York to Albany for over 250 years. Early settlers named the reaches based on straight stretches where limited adjustments to maintaining the sails took place. New Hamburg was known as the start of the longest reach. The longest reach goes from Wappingers Creek to Crum Elbow in Hyde Park. Sloops carried produce, dry goods, livestock, and people up and down the Hudson. Passengers often carried their own bedding and food for longer trips. Livestock was typically strapped to the mast. A sloop captain's reputation had to be impeccable, as he handled substantial financial affairs for his customers. It was not uncommon for a sloop captain to negotiate the market prices of the cargo and collect the proceeds and bring the money back to the client. He also had to successfully navigate the Hudson River in all weather and tidal conditions without the aid of sophisticated navigation tools. Between 1860 and 1873, various boat captains operated 7 schooners and 23 sloops from New Hamburg, including an African-American captain named Clinton Williams. Clint and his 2 brothers sailed the Hudson River on their sloop named the Little Martha from New Hamburg. The inset image shows the actual Little Martha sloop, built in 1867 and owned by that family. 14 of the remaining 29 New Hamburg vessels were owned by Drake family members. In February of 1871, New Hamburg witnessed what the newspapers titled the Human Holocaust on the Hudson. It was a horrific railroad accident on the railroad drawbridge over the Wappingers Creek along the Hudson. A passenger train was traveling north and it collided with a disabled tank train heading south. The trains exploded upon impact, instantly throwing people, luggage, and train parts into the water. 77 people were missing or unidentified. The number of confirmed deaths was 23, including the engineer, Doc Simmons. Some bodies were taken to Poughkeepsie for identification. Many were never recovered. Doc Simmons was hailed as a hero as he stayed with the train, braking all the way to his death when the engine plunged into the icy Hudson upon impact. A signal man from the coal train ran down the tracks toward the oncoming passenger train, waving his lantern. Simmons immediately applied the brakes, significantly slowing the train in the remaining time before impact. It is believed that many more passengers would have perished if he had chosen to abandon his post. In this, by 1870s, New Hamburg was developing and expanding to the north and the east, as witnessed in this old view of Conklin Street and Crow Hill area, with the 1875 schoolhouse on the top of the hill. The 1875 school, Crow Hill, replaced an old one-room schoolhouse. At the time of construction, it was the only free school in the town of Poughkeepsie with its own local school board. Here is a vintage class picture taken in front of the free school in Crow Hill. I just love this photo. And, if you, it's just fun to kind of just look at all the faces, look at the dress, and, it's just a moment of time that's been captured, and it's really pretty cool. And I should take the opportunity to thank David Turner, who's no stranger to your the Beacon Historical Society, but David provided a lot of great material for me in the way of postcards. He has a fabulous collection. So here, okay, let me just get you up here. This is 1893 Queen Anne style home that's located on 15 Conklin Street. Note the 1875 free school on the top of the hill to the left. It's now a multifamily home. In 1875, Seth Green, a fish culturist, artificially propagated sturgeon with eggs at the mouth of the Wapages Creek. Seth was solely responsible for introducing eastern shad from the Hudson River to the waters of California. He also started the first trout fish farm in New York. In 1987, the Fish Culture Hall of Fame, an institution of the American Fisheries Society, enshrines Seth Green as the father of fish culture in North America. Fishing has always been an important part of New Hamburg. Shad, herring, and striped bass are a few of the species fished for in the Hudson and its tributaries. The large prehistoric sturgeon, once known as Albany beef, were overfished in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Their numbers are slowly coming back now in the Hudson. On May 3rd, 1877, the hamlet suffered a devastating fire involving the loss of 7 buildings. In 1879, an iron swing bridge was erected and continued to be known as Drake's Bridge. New Hamburg has seen its share of train crashes. This image shows damage from a crash in 1899. But accidents and tragedies were not just confined to the railroad tracks or to fires. On March 27, 1882, with 90 people on board the Thomas Cornell steamer, heading south in a thick fog from Marlborough, crashed into Danskammer Point. Second pilot Schulters shouted out, "Heave, heave," and ran to stop. And at the instant, the Thomas Cornwell ran right up on Danskammer Point. The tolling of the Cornell's bell attracted the attention of a passing steamer, John L. Hasbrook, the Poughkeepsie to New York night boat. The Hasbrook took aboard most of the passengers and part of the crew. At Newburgh, the crew members and 30 passengers who had enough of steamboating for one night went ashore and spent the night. The remaining passengers went on to New York. Here's a portrait painting of the John L. Hasbrook done by the Bard brothers in 1864 when it was first built and launched. On March 4th, 1896, the Hasbrook, bound from Poughkeepsie to New York, was crowded on the reef above the landing at New Hamburg by ice, and it sunk. In 1900, the Hasbrook was renamed and operated as the Marlborough until 1917, when it was broken up and scrapped. Not all vessels ended up on Diamond Reef or Danskammer. Here, Captain Drake's petrol, transporting people up the Wappingers Creek. He ran regular trips to bring workers from Marlboro and other locations to work at the Wappinger factories. He also did sightseeing excursions. Note that the early rail bridge across the mouth of the Wappingers Creek opened to allow boat traffic. The current bridge does not open. Today, kayakers and bass fishermen slip under the bridge in low tide. Here are two rare images of World War I soldiers disembarking at New Hamburg for training at Camp Whitman in Fishkill Plains, a national training camp. When I saw this, again, David found these photos, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. I mean, the amount of people that were here, horses, wagons, and they were coming here to move to Fishkill Plains. 1928 was a significant year in New Hamburg. The railroad enlarged its right-of-way, eliminating Main Street crossing and constructing a new bridge slightly to the north. The resulting road, Bridge Street, bypassed the district area, effectively isolating this small mixed-use enclave from traffic patterns and architectural association with other streets. Further, the construction expanded the main line to 4 tracks and closed off the Main Street grade crossing. The houses in front of Main Street on the west, fronting Main Street on the west, were moved backward, and thus was created the surviving remnant of this residential commercial block. No longer the track crossing through street, Main Street became an isolated side road central to the community only because of the remaining general store. The Stone Street neighborhood changed significantly. The New York Central acquired the houses on the east side of the street and demolished them. So here's a question: when and why? When and why was the H at the end of New Hamburg dropped? The answer is found in the 1933 U.S. Postal Service Board on Geographic Names. The board issued 12 principles related to geographic names in the United States. The principle that directly applied was number 8, drop the H in Berg. It appears that 1933 is when that change took place and the H was dropped, although I don't understand how Newburgh got to keep theirs, so something happened. I don't know what it was. From 1910 to 1969, a group of 20 women who called themselves the 20th Century Club of New Hamburg met once a month. The meeting would go like this: a roll call with an inspirational quote, business, a lecture, and a sketch, a unique anecdote or a story. Note that the publications in this image have different spellings for the different years. The first one on the left is before 1933 and still has the H. In 1962, New Hamburg Railroad Station closed due to a tragic pedestrian accident. Several people were killed walking on the tracks by a New York Central B-liner. The train station reopened 19 years later in 1981. Today, Metro North boasts very reliable service to and from New Hamburg. The southbound train service to Grand Central's terminal takes about 90 minutes. It takes approximately 16 minutes to arrive in Poughkeepsie to the north. In 1987, the Main Street Historic District was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So where are we today? Let's take a look at a few more slides quick as I wrap up. New Hamburg, it still witnesses plenty of Hudson River commercial vessel traffic. There are Hudson River boat tours of all sizes. Canoeing is now kayaking. Fishing from a boat is still alive and well. What can you catch in the Hudson at New Hamburg, or for that matter at Beacon? There you go. In 2012 blog, a local resident, Mary Hornbeck, reminisced and shared her experience growing up in New Hamburg. Here is one of her quotes. New Hamburg has always been one big family, a community of small families, all concerned about each other. It is the perfect place to live. It has everything for peace of mind, safety, and community spirit. Old and new residents blend very well. And I think that I've talked to a lot of people in New Hamburg, and they still believe that to this day. So that actually brings me to the end of my talk. I have all this reference material listed on the Dutchess County website. There's about 38 different sources that you can access there if you want to dig down deeper, if you want to look at all this astrological articles and stuff on, the solstice and all with Dan Scammer, and, there's information on that. There's information on just about every subject that I talked on there if you want to go further. But it's my pleasure to have spent time with you. I want to thank you all very much for that, and thank Diane for asking me to come here tonight. So, thank you. And I'll certainly entertain any questions or comments for that matter as well. So, yes, sir.
The dancing mark obviously must still exist. Is it on private property?
Okay, so that has the power plant on it, right? So how, you would know more about this than I do.
So if you were crossing the Newburgh Beacon Bridge now, Tower Newburgh, and you looked to the north, you would see setback Royston, and closer to the shore is Dansmere. Central Hudson built those plants post World War II to meet the burgeoning needs of the area, particularly the Effingham Road and both of those places of employment that were here that then disappeared. In the state of New York in 1999, we were forced to divest our power plants. The government at the time said you can't make it, transmit it, serve it, and read the meter. You have to get out of the making business. So we just sell those plants. Those plants don't work anymore. No one, they're not economically viable. Though they have natural gas, they have oil, and they have coal capacity. So they're great dual fuel plants. Long story short, the Armstrongs, to whom you alluded, who had lived at Danscombe Point, are related to the founders of Central Hudson Gas Company, Corporation, who live in Newburgh. And so they gravitate toward, they marry into the Armstrong family. That's where they're going to buy this land to build this property. So in Central Hudson lore, we refer to it as Duivels Danskamer, is how you say it in Dutch, the devil's dance chamber. And that's a big part of all the history of the company, Danskammer, and the fact that company founders owned Danskammer and chose to put the power plants there. So a long answer, but there are power plants there now. They do not operate because they're not economically viable unless it's the hottest day of the year and the state power grid needs.
Thank you. No, that's good. That's good. Thank you, Denise. Anyone else? Any comments? Any questions? Yes.
What churches are still open now?
I'm sorry, what is that?
What churches are still
Oh,
open?
the one church is open, I have to go back, in St. Nicholas. They have services, you go down there on Sunday and parking can be a little bit of an issue, but they have their services and all. Yeah. Yes.
Where did the Hamburg reference, the new Hamburg, was there German settlers? I mean, why that?
That's a good question, Denise. I don't know the answer to that, I've always laughed, though, when I look at all the names that we have, all over the country, because it's new everything, right? So it's like, it wasn't like people came here and came up with a totally new name. It was like New York, New Amsterdam, new, new everything. But I don't know that, why Hamburg was chosen and originally, because you had the Dutch there and the English, and
It was High Point for a long time, right? And Chelsea was Low Point for a long time.
yes, yep. And I know that Newburgh had a huge,
Palatine.
right, the Palatine's there, but I didn't evidence that on New Hamburg, that it would be the Palatine's there. Could be some, just not sure. Sue? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't say the wrong thing, sorry. Yeah, Dutchess County Historical Society, the four initials, and .org. And if you just go on there and search for New Hamburg or whatever, you'll find the resources, so, good, thanks, yes.
Did any of your research take you a little bit further up Sheep Road, up in Bowden Park area? I'm fascinated by the fact that George Clinton, who's then Vice President of the United States, built his house right there, a
Yeah.
house long lost because of the great gravel mines.
Yes.
But I just wonder if you came across him.
Well, here's the problem.
He's a Newburgh guy. Why does he end up in Dutchess County?
Yeah. So here's the challenge I find. I mean, now you're getting up into Wappinger, which is fine. But I mean, it's like, you get in that rabbit hole and you can't get out. I mean, I have more in here than I really should have in here, but I keep, you find something and it's like, oh my gosh, look at this guy, this fish guy, Seth, But there were a lot of big estates right along Sheaf Road. I mean, there was a lot of big estates up there. And George Clinton was there. And of course, they have, the Clinton Point, the river where you have, the Tilcon and all that stuff going on. So, yeah, I don't know why he chose that spot, but I mean, there was a lot of wealth there. And I have a feeling some of that wealth came from the railroad, because of people being able to come from the city, get off the train, and have their estate up here, just like so many of the other estates that ran on the east side, all the way up Dutchess. But again, I don't really know the answer because I started coming across names in Wappinger. They said, I gotta stop. I can't go there. Yes.
I have a question for Bill Jeffway, the director of the Dutchess County Historical Society. Can you tell us about the collection at the Historical Society?
In general, or
Want to use the mic?
Just so people are aware of what the offerings are.
Come on, use the mic. Might want to mention the Carolyn Clowns exhibit at Locust Grove. Oh, yes.
it's almost like.
Thank you. That was a nice question about, the question was about our collections, because it's kind of a special moment in that we have through December 30th at Locust Grove, which was mentioned earlier, so it's the Locust Grove Estates, obviously in the news, but between Wednesday and Sunday through the end of the year, between 1 and 5, we have an exhibition of paintings of Carolyn Clowes, who was nationally known, actually internationally known. She had work featured in London in the 19th century from LaGrange, but as a woman doing some extraordinary things that women didn't normally do, her legacy faded away until we've restored it. So we're most proud to have over 20 paintings and over 20 drawings in a pretty magnificent exhibition up there. So we're kind of thrilled to be able to get past COVID and start to get out and bring our collections out into the real world again. And I'd say that's kind of the leading point of our collection at the moment.
What are in your archives?
So the interesting, one of the things I liked about the County Historical Society is that we have the longest running historical journal, the yearbook, which is now fully online, all 12,000 pages. So the Historical Society has not just been the keeper of important objects and documents and photographs, although it's been since 1914, researching, publishing, and interpreting history, local history. So an important part of our collections is our publishing. And the more traditional publications and documents include everything from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War to the World War I, which we recently celebrated. And we have an extensive photograph collection. We're beginning to put more and more online. So we have a lot of this on our website. If you just search for the Dutchess County Historical Society, you will see. Thank you for inviting us today. Yes, I think, so this is being recorded so it can be online, yes. Yep.
All right, thank you. And I'll turn it back to Diane if you have anything you'd like to say.
I just want to give you a certificate
Oh.
of appreciation for
Thank you.
joining us this evening.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And as mentioned, this is recorded and will be on our website at our beaconhistorical.org under past events. And Bill Jeffway will also post it on the Dutchess County Historical Society website as well. So All of our programs are recorded and great during winter months to visit our website and enjoy past programs if you've missed any of them, as well as on our Explore button. We have many exhibitions about various topics of Beacon's history. So thank you so much. I hope to see you at our holiday party. Come visit us at our headquarters and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you so much.